Hi, I'm Cody Woodworth with Omaha Public Power District. So the purpose of our trailer today is to give you some real-world demonstrations out in here instead of out in the field. So I'll just go through some minor parts with you first. So the very top line there is going to be our primary. That's going to be 8,000 volts. And if there's 3 of them on the line, it's going to be 8,000 per phase, or 2 phases is 13.8. If you go to our lower line here, that black wire, that's the one that feeds your home. That's 3 wires bundled together. It's going to be 120, 240, which will run your house. That second lowest one there is your neutral. That is the return current. It has no voltage on it unless there's an issue with our system. The lower part is an overhead transformer. That's something you'll see in the backyards in your neighborhoods in an overhead area. That will basically step down the 8,000 from the top and bring it down to a usable voltage, which is 122.08. And then if you're in a neighborhood that has one of these, which is a pad mount transformer, it's the same thing as the overhead one, but just underground. So that one does the same thing. It takes 8,000, steps it down to 122.40, and that will also power your house. The meter that you see right there, that meter is on every home or every business that has OPPD service. And it basically is the cash register and tells you how much usage you have. Then up at the very top there, those are our cutouts. I would consider them like a fuse door for a fuse panel like inside your house, but it is for primary voltage. So if there's ever an issue on the line, you'll see that open. And when it's closed, everything's working properly. Tree limbs are one of the biggest causes, obviously, for OPPD of outages. So making sure to maintain your trees on your property always cuts down on outage times. OPPD does a heck of a job trimming as many trees as we can, but it's one of the major causes for OPPD outages. So a lot of times when we have a system disturbance or a storm, a lot of tree limbs get overblown and blown into our distribution line. It causes a lot of outages, a lot of momentaries. And then sometimes you'll see your lights dim 3 times and then kick out. What that is when a limb lays over the 3-phase, you may see a blink in your power, and it might happen 3 times. If it clears itself or gets off the line, you'll stay hot. If it hits 3 times, you'll be out of power until somebody from OPPD comes out to make repairs. So if you live in an overhead neighborhood, and let's say as a homeowner you decided to paint your home, this would be the type of ladder that you would set up. A scenario where I've seen this happen actually in the field is someone was painting their house and they decided to use a metal ladder. In the same scenario where there was primary overhead, they actually fell backwards and got into our 8,000. What I would tell you, if something like that did happen, your best case scenario is to make sure that you stay on the ladder even though it's on the 8,000. So a lot of ladders that OPPD uses are fiberglass ladders. This is an aluminum ladder like you'd have at your home. These are very dangerous when it comes to working around electricity. They're never used around electricity, only fiberglass. So one of the main reasons why that we use fiberglass is it's insulated from ground. When you use aluminum, you're basically sticking a wire up to our 8,000 and touching the ground. Aluminum ladders conduct electricity very well, just like the overhead line that's made of aluminum. If you're not sure if it's safe to set your ladder up to paint your house, or you're not sure what you're looking at overhead, you can always reach out to OPPD or an ESD to talk to us. We'll actually meet you at your house, kind of go through with you, look at the situation you have set up, and if it's something we need to de-energize for you to do your work, that's something that we can do. Ultimately, we want you to be safe out there, and if there's any question at all, don't hesitate to call OPPD to verify what's there, what's around you, and what you can and can't do as a customer. Another common reason that you might lose power is because of critters. Squirrels, raccoons, birds, all sorts of issues that they can get onto the top side of our pole and cause issues. They can stand on this transformer that is grounded and then touch our top part of the line, which is 8,000. And when they touch that, it will blow open the fuse, which will cause an outage for you. but it'll be something very, very loud. It sounds basically twice as loud as a shotgun going off. That's what you'll hear in your backyard if you hear a fuse blow. One of the things that we do to protect against that is we will put up Guthrie guards around the top part, so it'll generally poke them before they try to touch the 8000. Or we'll put on rubber hoses to try and cover it, so if they do happen to touch it, it won't take an outage. That's not always the case, but in general, our specifications say every time we set a pole or every time we do any type of maintenance that we use bird guard protection to cut down on outages for our customers. Another dangerous scenario that we run into quite often is kites. Kites, balloons for weddings. So one of the main concerns with kites is that string can be conductive, and a lot of times it can get into our lower neutral line along with our 8000 volts, and that can be a very dangerous situation. I would ask, if you're flying kites or balloons, to look at your surroundings beforehand. Always a safe place is go to a park where there's no overhead obstructions, especially power. That's the safest place to go. So when you do let off the balloons, and let's say they did get into our transmission line, it can take nearly 20, 30,000 people out of power, because it can actually kick out our substation. So you want to make sure, if you're letting balloons, kites, anything that can fly near our lines, make sure that you've checked everything out and you know you're good. Balloons, generally when you let them go, you have no idea where they're going to go, so I just recommend not doing it at all. But so it could be a sunny and 75 day and you walk out and you see a power line down in your backyard, or it could be right after a storm, you see a power line down in your backyard. What I recommend to people is stay inside your house, don't get anywhere near it, immediately call 911 or OPPD. We will send someone out as fast as we can to take care of that. Our system is meant for, if a power line falls on the ground, it will kick it out. So that means it'll be de-energized once it hits the ground. That does not always happen. Sometimes power lines can fall on the ground and still stay energized. They don't make any noise, they don't look any different. Everything looks fine, but once you get too close to that, within 12 to 15 feet is what they say, that's when you can start feeling the electricity that's on the ground. And if you happen to touch it, electricity is one of those deals. Once you grab onto it, it sees you as load, like load at your house, so it will continue to hold on to you until something opens up. And if it didn't open up falling on the ground, it's probably not going to open up with you holding on to it. So when I say open up, that means de-energize the line. So, when it's energized and you grab onto it, it's not going to let you go. It's going to continue to keep pumping because it sees it as load, just like load in your house when you turn on a light switch. Yeah, so if you ever get into a car accident and you hit any of our equipment and there's a power line that falls on your car or maybe falls around or near you, that's the time you call 911 and you call OPPD. The main thing is to stay inside your car. You don't know, we don't know until we get on scene if the power line is hot or if it's de-energized. If you have to get out of your car, if there's a fire or some situation that forces you out of your car, you need to either hop on one foot while not touching your car or shuffle at least 20 foot away to make sure you're away from the hazard. Okay, so I'd like to go through, so this is an underground setup transformer. So you'll see this in newer neighborhoods generally, you'll see these out. There won't be these overhead power lines, but a lot of times even these underground ones ultimately go to a street that are fed from a pole. So when people say, well, I'm all underground, yes, in a neighborhood you may be all underground, but eventually they come up to a pole that feeds that area. So sometimes we'll get calls like, I'm in an underground neighborhood, how did I lose power? Well, maybe the poles are all down on that main street that feed your underground, just like this setup right here. So that's the primary coming in from the overhead, and then it comes into this underground transformer and starts to feed it underground for the neighborhood. but generally it always feeds from overhead. So this elbow right here is 8,000. That's what feeds each transformer. So this one will feed to another transformer, and this one will feed to another transformer. These are your secondaries here. This is 12240. That's what feeds your house, generally in a residential neighborhood. So each one of these wires will run underground to your house. And basically why we go through this is something that you'll see, but it's underneath the ground. It's coated and safe, but if you happen to hit it with a shovel, that's when problems start to happen. You can get into the 12240, which 12240 a lot of times, it doesn't sound like as high as voltage, but it has a lot of amperage. So when you go to grab, let's say a secondary that's in a hole that you've dug, it's not gonna let you go. It's gonna hold on to you until either it kicks out this transformer that's fused, or it just continues to pump because it sees it as a light switch that was turned on in your house. Yeah, so a lot of times when you have an electrical issue or you get into some electrical, you may get burned and your exterior will look just fine, but what actually happened was electricity has this weird thing where it burns you from the inside out. A lot of times after somebody has an accident or gets burned, they'll look just like they looked before the accident. But it's the weeks and days after that where they start to blow up. It starts affecting their skin tissue, their skin. It's a very painful process to go through. Just make sure as a customer, just make a simple call to 811, the DIG hotline, to make sure you know where everything is at before you begin work at your house, or even if it's business. Always call in for locates. They're very quick on the turnaround, I think 48 hours, so you can still continue on your project that same weekend. Yeah, so generally you'll see this in neighborhoods, but you'll see bigger boxes in commercial areas that are switches. One of the main things I always talk about, even when I talk with the kids, adults, anyone, just because it's underground doesn't mean you should get anywhere around this equipment. It's not something you should touch or sit on. Just stay away from it. You know, everything that we do is grounded. There's a bunch of safety factor built into it, but there's really no good reason to touch a transformer, a switch, anything, any of our equipment, unless you're a certified person with OPPD that understands what they're doing and what they're touching. So this trailer is going to be generated by a generator. Generally that's not how it's done, but for this scenario, this is what we do. So the generator actually is back feeding on our secondary side. So it's feeding in 12240. The coils inside that transformer will step it up to 8,000. And the only reason I mention that is during storms and stuff, when you're out of power for longer periods of time, a lot of people want to hook up generators. You got to be very mindful how you hook up the generator. If you're not qualified or don't understand what to do, please do not hook it up, because it's very easy for you to hook up that generator, back feed onto our system, and what you're doing is the lineman that's working on the very top line is working on that. Now you've just energized him at 8,000. We have protections in place for that, but we ask that someone is certified and understands how to hook up a generator if they're going to be doing something like that in a storm situation or if they're out of power. Thank you for joining us for the electrical presentation of our trailer. Everything that you saw here today was just an example of what can happen in the field. We're actually not using the same voltages, so everything that you saw here is going to be a lot more out there, so make sure you're safe, mindful, and if you have any questions, call OPPD, and if it's an emergency, call 911 and OPPD. Thanks for joining us.